Hello, my name is Gargi Seshadri. I'm the technical trainer at Click. It's a business intelligence company that has partnered with Intuit to provide the functions and features of QuickView, the tool that powers the back-end technology driving QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. I'm excited and honored to present the training modules that will enable you to create great reports in QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. There are 3 training modules. Training Module 1 is Basic, Training Module 2 is Intermediate, and Training Module 3 covers advanced topics. Basic covers the introductory chapters which will demonstrate how to connect to advanced reporting from QuickBooks. It will show you the initial steps required to understand the features of the advanced reporting tool, as well as show you how to navigate through it. There are steps for creating a report from scratch, but also from using existing template files. There are 5 chapters in the Basic module, and it's pretty much a standalone module. The Intermediate module demonstrates the power of QuickBooks Advanced Reporting and shows you the great potential that lies within this tool. It demonstrates using an already existing report how you could emulate that report and create the same structure. So you would be creating charts in this module, tables, many visualizations, and a consistent navigation using list boxes and filtering mechanisms. There are 3 chapters to the Intermediate module. The Advanced module continues with the Intermediate module's report that you created and builds on that. In the Advanced module, you'll be creating a more dynamic environment by using variables, conditional shows, and many color enhancements that you will use. So from this point on, it's best to start from the Basic module and work your way through Intermediate and Advanced to get a great understanding and appreciation of the Advanced Reporting tool and its features. Instructions are created in a step-by-step fashion, and it's self-paced so that you can learn at your own easy pace, and it's flexible for you to go through at qbar.intuit.com for the instructions and the zip file that will give you all the supporting files and recordings and chapters there. So please take a look at qbar.intuit.com, and I have the instructions that follow. So if you go to qbar.intuit.com, you will see Training Module 1 Basic, Training Module 2 Intermediate, and Training Module 3 Advanced. The course documentation with step-by-step instructions, video recordings, image files, and project files necessary to create the completed projects in the above modules will be provided in a zip file. The zip file is called Advanced Reporting Training Files.zip. You would download and unzip this file to a folder of your choice. Once you've done that, you would open QuickBooks. You'd open the specific company file for this project, which is called Sample Product Based Business.qbw. It's a QuickBooks working file. You would then proceed to the File tab and switch to Multi-User mode. This is very important for you to be able to access the Advanced Reporting tool. Then you'd open Advanced Reporting from the Reports tab in QuickBooks. You are on your way now to creating a wonderful report. So here is a screenshot of what the Sample Product Based Business.qbw file looks like, and from here you can open that. So good luck with your report creation, and I'm very happy to take you on this journey to explore QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. Thank you. Hello, this is QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. All the training modules will be presented to you by Gargi Seshadri. We left off at the intro looking at the company file that we'll be using, Sample Product Based Business.qbw. Hopefully you have retrieved this file from the downloads at qbar.intuit.com in the Learning Center, where you'll have all your training modules there, as well as the zip file for creating your projects. So the training modules, the format of that, let me describe that to you in brief so you know exactly what sequence to follow in your learning. The courses are created in a modular fashion, chapter by chapter, so it's very easy for you to go at your own pace. It's self-paced learning. So there are 3 modules, Basic, Intermediate, and Advanced. So Training Module 1 contains Basic with 5 chapters. Training Module 2 contains Intermediate with 3 chapters. And Training Module 3 are Advanced sections with 3 chapters as well. Chapter 12 is the final chapter in the sequence, which has appendix and resources. So this is pretty much a standalone chapter just for your reference when you would like to look up some references, tips and tricks, some resource links. Prerequisites for this are simple. You just need to have QuickBooks loaded and a basic understanding of how to get into QuickBooks and use it. So let's start with the basic training module 1, which starts with chapter 1 now, an introduction. The course objectives for chapter 1 are as follows. We'll like you to understand the basic principles of how a report is created. We'll teach you to access and use advanced reporting in the correct way. You'll also learn how to create a consistent navigation on how to do a variety of searches for detailed analysis drill downs. We'll help you to create some basic charts, tables, and visualizations in the basic training module, and this will provide easy analysis for customers and users. We'll also show you how to create a cohesive reporting structure using the layout and design, and we'll help you build a clear, robust, and in-depth report using the flexible advanced reporting tool, either by starting from scratch or using a report template. Why would we like to use advanced reporting? For instance, in this world today, we like to make a green world and we'd like to have less paper. So trying to reduce the amount of paper that's generated is important. So also collaboration is a big factor when we try to use advanced reporting. Collaboration is made much easier, analysis is made much easier when you can share the advanced reporting reports that you've created. And getting all the information from the data banks that you have, all the massive amount of data into a format that's visual and creative and has all the information at your fingertips in a very cohesive way makes it easier for people to use it and analyze the data at hand. So it tells your story pretty effectively when you create a flexible, robust, and wonderful report using Advanced Reporting Tool. So how does QuickBooks Advanced Reporting work? Well, we go into the Advanced Reporting tool from QuickBooks and we use QlikView, which is the back-end technology that brings in the data and allows you to use the Advanced Reporting tool to access the data from QuickBooks. There are many functions and features that are part of QlikView that we use in the Advanced Reporting tool. What benefit will be derived from using this advanced reporting tool? Well, basically, you can take the massive amounts of data and structure of tables and create a more flexible looking report with visuals that are creative and easy to use and understand. The course expectations is for you to, at the end of the advanced training module, create a whole report with bells and whistles that's easy for a user to analyze and look at, easy for a user not just to analyze but to provide collaboration in a team. So your goal is to finish a report having charts and visualizations, consistent navigation, and provide that for any of your users and customers and feel the self-sufficiency and independence to create that report. QlikView. What is QlikView? QlikView is the software application that is created by Qlik, which has powered with Intuit and creates all the functions and features. That's the back end power of the advanced reporting tool. So how does QlikView work? It provides a lot of the functions and features that you see in the back end. So the functions that are derived from QlikView, and you will be using that seamlessly with the advanced reporting tool. It does not conflict with using the advanced reporting tool in QuickBooks. So it's in the back end, it functions in the back end, provides you many of the functions and features without your even knowing that it's there. So if you need further information on some of the QlikView functions, you can always visit the Qlik community, which is a great resource for you to gather some information that you may not find at qbar.intuit.com. It's important to understand the performance criteria for using advanced reporting. So in order to maintain optimum performance while using the advanced reporting tool, there are a few simple rules we need to follow. In the report that we create in intermediate and advanced, we create a report with many sheet objects. But this is just for the demo purpose, just to show you all the tools and tips and tricks and all the features without having to build several reports and go back and forth from them. So we build one report and show you all the incredible features of the advanced reporting tool. But in your real project, you should keep the number of sheets down to a minimum. And we suggest about 3 maximum in your reports to avoid any performance issues. Try to eliminate any variables and expressions that are not being used. Reduce the number of sheet objects, and you'll learn what sheet objects are. They can be anywhere from the buttons to your list boxes to a pie chart, or anything that gets placed on the sheet generally becomes a sheet object. We'll also tell you to reduce the number of list boxes, which are used for filtering, and optimize your images always. That's a big criteria. Keep any expressions concise that you may use. So we're going to look at the Advanced Reporting Start page, but before we get into the Advanced Reporting Start page, we are going to go into QuickBooks starting from the company file and learn how we need to access this in multi-user mode. In order to access advanced reporting, you need to be in multi-user mode, and we'll show you exactly how that is done shortly. So let's go to the QuickBooks Start page, and we will go and see how this is done. Here is the company file that you will be using, and in this company file you will highlight the one that we have provided for you and click on Open. This will take you to your QuickBooks page. Here, just ignore this if it asks you for admin password. And it says you're opening a QuickBooks sample file. Now you're at the QuickBooks Start page. We have not yet entered the advanced reporting, and over here you'll get a welcome dialog box, and you can close that as well. So what we need to do is we're going to look at several of the options here and how to create a multi-user mode for a user in order to access advanced reporting tool. And in order to help us and guide us in understanding some of the options here, I'm going to introduce you to Phil, and Phil will lead us into the different areas that you need to change in order to gain access to the advanced reporting tool. So let me introduce you to Phil Hartman, who is our supportability engineer with the CARE team, and he will help you understand the start page and set up the multi-user mode. Hi Phil, how are you doing today?
Hi, Gargi. I'm good. How are you? Hi, everyone. Some things to know first about QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, or QBAR as we affectionately call it, is you need to be in multi-user mode in QuickBooks. If you try to access Advanced Reporting in single-user mode, you'll get a message telling you to please switch to multi-user mode. It's the only way you'll gain access to it. By default, only the admin user is granted access to QBAR. And the reason for that is once a user has access to QBAR, they have access to every bit of data that's in the QuickBooks data file database. So you need to be really careful on who you allow access to. Of course, you know how to get to actually multi-user mode by the file drop-down menu and switching to multi-user mode. You can add access to other users for QBAR, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail a little later on. Some things to know about QuickBooks. Well, I guess we can get into that really quick. Under the company drop-down menu, you'd want to go to the Users menu and choose Set Up Users and Roles. And from here, you can either create a new user or edit an existing one. In this particular file, Gargi's already created a user called QBAR. If you would, please, could you click on the QBAR user and choose Edit? And actually, you'll see that we've created a role called QBAR, where we actually gave them the role of QBAR. Go ahead and click OK here and go to the Roles drop-down menu.
Say yes here.
Go ahead, say no. It's wanting you to create a password. Just go ahead and click OK and say no. Thank you.
Okay.
And then go to the role list for me, please. And if you want, go to the QBAR list, the QBAR role.
Sure.
And click on that and choose Edit. So once you go here, you'll see under the File drop-down menu, the File menu here, if you click the plus sign there, you'll see that this is where QuickBooks Advanced Reporting permissions are. And here you would choose full access. So if you highlight the QuickBooks Advanced one and click Full, then this will give them full access to the QBAR file, to QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. Okay. I
So
think you
they
ended
have
up
to
giving them
have,
a kind
Phil, a
yeah.
question for you. They have
Yes.
to have QuickBooks Advanced Reporting checked off here, but if
Correct.
they did not click on
You
full, would they still be able to access QuickBooks Advanced Reporting?
no, they'd have to click on Full. You were on the accounting one when it clicked Full. So
Okay.
can you click back on accounting? Click the account where it says accounting. Go back to edit. Click accounting there. Yeah, click accounting there and hit none. And now click on the file and click on click on QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. That now it has full.
Okay. So
Okay?
this has to be highlighted in green, and then you have to click on full in order to
Correct.
give the access level for QuickBooks Advanced Reporting under File. Okay,
That's
great.
correct.
That's wonderful,
Okay.
Phil. Thank you for
Mhm.
elaborating that. So if you
You're
wanted
welcome.
to create a new user, you would go right here to the user list tab, create a new user, and you would provide the role that would have the advanced reporting feature. Am I correct, Phil?
Correct. Or you could just choose an existing role for a user that you want to grant advanced reporting to and just add that permission to their role.
Excellent.
So
Thank you.
there's several ways you can do that.
Thank you, Phil. That's great.
Mhm.
Now, in order to enter the advanced reporting tool, we had already set it to multi-user mode. And is it necessary to be admin before you can get into the advanced reporting tool, or can you get in without being an admin, Phil?
If you have the permissions for QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, then you can get in. As I said earlier, only the admin by default has access to advanced reporting.
Okay.
So your QBAR user, if they were logged in, they would be able to access advanced reporting, but they wouldn't be able to access anything else inside of QuickBooks because they don't have access to anything else but advanced reporting.
Right. Okay, so pretty much now what we can do is we can enter the advanced reporting tool, right? And we're going to
Correct.
do that by going into reports. And in there, if you move down to the fifth from the top, you'll see advanced reporting. And once you click that, if you do not have that installed already, it will ask you to install it at this point. And here, it brings up this little dialog box that says update data. Now, why do we need that? Updating data because at some point you may have made changes somewhere in your structure and it needs to update the data that's in the QuickBooks file system. So it needs to update that periodically. If you are convinced that you do not need to update it, you can skip it. If you have just entered like 15 minutes later from the last time and it brings up this dialog box, then you really know that you don't need to really update at this point, so you can skip it. But if you haven't come in for a couple of days or, maybe a day or two or maybe even a week, it would be suggested that you update every so often. So let's click on the update and we're going to see what happens. Now, Phil, explain to us why there are 1 to 146 steps that we have to wait for in this updating data.
Sure. Right now, what's happening, QuickBooks Advanced Reporting does not actually create reports out of the QuickBooks data file. It is actually creating them out of the data that is extracted into the QlikView module or the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting module. So it's putting it in a format that QlikView can now read and use. It's one reason why Advanced Reporting does not impede the performance of QuickBooks in any way, shape, or form because it's actually not even using the data in QuickBooks. But this is just the extraction process of pulling all of the data out of QuickBooks into a format that we can read in QuickBooks Advanced Reporting and the QlikView software that we're actually using.
Okay, thank you. That was a great explanation. And so as you can see, this can take either a couple of minutes or it can take maybe even a few hours. It depends all on the size of the data. So I guess patience is required in order to wait for these 146 steps to proceed along. So we're almost there. So I think we'll be more along the lines of 2 minutes. So almost there. Maybe when you have this situation, you may want to get a cup of coffee. Right, Phil?
That's correct. Beverage of your choice.
Exactly. Great. So here we come to the screen where you can either opt to view the starter reports that are already there, but I will just close this and take you to another screen that is basically the start page for your advanced reporting tool. Now over here, it gives you several different bubbles that kind of give you introductory messages here for starting off. But we'll look at the left-hand side, and above the left-hand side, we see basically the toolbar. So within the toolbar, there's a few different features, and I'm going to have Phil once again talk to us about some of the features that are in the toolbar. So we see library, we see a print icon, and some of these are commonly known, like the back button and forward button, but some of the other ones are more of a mystery to us. So why don't I have Phil describe a little bit about what's over here, as well as the reports tab and the report list. Okay, Phil.
Yeah, the one in the upper left-hand corner, the reports list, has several functions to it. It allows you to open from the report list. You can open your recent reports. That'll show you a list of all the reports that you've opened recently within the last few times you've been open. There is the Welcome Center there that Gargi had closed earlier. You can close the report from here. And you can also import files that you've created on other systems or someone's created for you in QBar. We'll talk a little bit more about how to import and export. The share button is actually a way to export the report that you have open into a file that can be imported into QuickBooks Advanced Reporting on another system, or you can email it or copy it and give it to someone else to where they can actually import it. Then we have the, you can also import from that button that Gargi is clicking on as well.
Now, Phil, I have a question for you about the export and import. The paths and file paths for these two, do they have to be in the same location all the time before you can import and export, or they can be from any path that you can either import or export to?
Well, when you go to import, it's going to ask you to browse to where the file is located at. So you can put that anywhere on your PC that you would like to. And then when you go to import it, it's going to import it into the folder that is created in the same folder where the QuickBooks data file is located at. And that folder will be the company file name with advanced reporting at the end of it.
Okay, great.
As the
Thank you for
folder
elaborating.
name.
Thank you for elaborating that. Okay, so another thing that we have here is the library, which is a pretty important feature here. The library basically has some predefined charts. If you click on it, it will expand and show you some of the 5 preset charts that you can use that are available for you to use. It has several date elements. My God, look at how many choices you have for different types of date elements. Now, these are already predefined, so there's some combination of expressions that have been created to bring in these dates, probably from the table structure. So these are built already for you. There are list boxes that you can also use that are preset, and you can use those, as well as tables. So there are about 3 different tables that are already set up for you. And text and utility, they give current selections, they give report title, search all fields, report subtitle, and comments. And we're going to talk about some of these features later on, so I won't get into any of these in depth right now. But as you can see, these are some predefined elements in the library that you can use to establish your report without having to dig too far into figuring out where to start. Now, of course, if you don't find, for instance, something that you like in the charts here, we can build a chart from scratch, and I will show you exactly how to do that as we go along. So that is going to be one of our activities where we're going to build charts. So this is the library, and the library is very helpful for using something that's already been predefined to create your report, so you don't have to start all the way from scratch and figure out where to start. Okay, so that's the library. We have also a report list, which basically has some of the starter reports, which is called, has the S. These are basically templates. And these are templates where you can take some of these starter reports and work through them and edit them and then rename them and use them as your own. So these are already formatted for you with certain visualizations and charts, and they're there for you to use as template files. Now, you could also go to the last option, which is start from scratch, and we're going to do exactly that in one of the chapters. We're going to build a report starting from scratch. And then you would click on this and say open to start a report from scratch. So this basically tells you all the different reports that are here. And you can filter out the reports under show by my custom reports. Shows only the custom reports that I worked on. Or you can see all of them, or you can see the starter reports, which have the S next to it, okay? And then you also have the import button from here too, so you can also do an import from here as well. So let's close this. And the other thing that I want to show you before we go on to another topic is this little help icon, which is pretty commonly known as help with a question mark. So if you click on this, you're going to see the Learning Center. And this is what I was telling you about. It takes you to that site, qbar.intuit.com. This is the Learning Center. This is where you'll find all these modules that we're going to talk about over there. And this is where you'll be able to download some of the zip files and the modules to be able to use that for your learning. Okay. So let's close that and go back to our starting page here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more about the files, the types of files that are available in the Advanced Reporting tool, and some of those will be discussed by Phil. So we're going to basically go back to Phil, and he's going to talk about some of the files, file types that are there. Phil, you want to describe the type of files that we have?
Sure. The first file that's listed there is the QBW file. That's your QuickBooks working file. And again, keep in mind that when you're using advanced reporting, there will be a folder called your company name, advanced reporting, for every file that you use advanced reporting on. So if you have multiple files in the same location, you're going to have multiple files with their different company names that have advanced reporting listed after that. And that's where you will find, in that advanced reporting folder, where you'll find all your different reports. Should you move your company file to a different location and open up advanced reporting, you're just going to see these starter reports because your files are located in a different location. But you can move them easily enough or move your file back to the folder where it once was. The QVR file, this is an extension for your advanced reports that are used when you import and export. So when you export a report from QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, it's going to have a QVR file extension. When you go to import it, you'll be looking for the QVR wherever you stored it. Once you open that file, or when you create a file from scratch, it becomes a QVT. That's the file extension for QuickBooks Advanced Reporting templates. The QVD is the data from QuickBooks that is now in the ClickView format, and that's where all the data is stored that the reports are being generated from.
Okay, great, Phil. Thank you so much for those explanations. They were very good and very helpful. So this is kind of the example file path that I'm showing you that shows you where some of these file types will reside. For instance, this one is users public documents into it, and QuickBooks, after that you'll see company files, and then QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions, our version of 16.0. From here, it may change for all of you because you might be using a different company file. So this part probably will be different for you. And the QVR files that Phil was talking about, the report files, will go into backup reports once you've saved it. Then you have this path, which is pretty similar, except it does not have the backup reports at the end of it. They contain the QVT and QVD files. So the data files plus the template files are there. And then finally, you have just under the QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions path, you have the QuickBooks working files. Okay, so those are there. So your path might be slightly different from this, but generally it will resemble something to this effect. Okay. Is this about accurate, Phil? Am I missing anything?
Nope, that's pretty accurate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Those are our default locations for our sample files.
Exactly. And then we want to talk a little bit more about QVD file type because it's an interesting type of file. It's basically a data file. So what it has, it's generated from the QlikView environment, and QlikView generates these files that are compressed. These are highly compressed files that have table data. So they contain one table in each of these QVD files. And basically you cannot open this in any Excel or any other program. It's pretty proprietary to QlikView. So this is created in the back end and by a data developer or sysadmin, and you don't really need to worry about how to open this or how to modify it. Basically, you don't need to modify this at all. It's being loaded for the data purposes of loading data, and it's just important to know that this makes it very quick to load the data. So it's pretty much housing a table of data. Okay. So what we may want to do is we may want to go through this activity one more time to create a user with permissions in our advanced reporting tool so we know how to do that. And it's a pretty important activity because we are probably going to have to do this at some point. So Phil, would you kind of guide me into creating this for one of our users, a mock user that we're going to try to generate who's going to have access to the advanced reporting tool? So lead me through the steps when we create a user. We're going to go to Company tab in QuickBooks, and in Users, we're going to set up users and roles. Now you can pretty much guide me, and we're going to set up a new user, Phil.
Great. Can you click the New button?
Okay, thank you.
Great. And let's go ahead and assign a username, maybe Gargi.
Sounds good to me. And I don't need to give a password, right? So I can just...
Not in this file. We have no personally identifiable data. Well, wait. Before you do that, you want to assign a role. I think for you, we can use the full access role, since we want you to have full access to everything. We trust you. Look, you're on an external accountant there.
Okay, I like having full access.
All right, go ahead and add that, and go ahead and click OK. Any role will work. Say no for this. You do not want a password. We don't recommend this for anyone. Now we need to go to the roles list and ensure that Gargi has access to this. So we want to go to the full access role.
Okay, so here I clicked on the role list, right?
Right, now go to the full access role. And keep in mind when we're doing this, anyone we give full access to will have full access to everything inside of QuickBooks. But if you choose Edit, go to the File option there and see how QuickBooks Advanced Reporting is not part of this. We want to highlight that and give full access. Just choose Full. There you go. And click OK. Now you will have full access to advanced reporting along with the permissions of everything else that is included in that role.
That is great. Thank you very much, Phil. That was very helpful. So now Gargi has full access and can get into the advanced reporting tool. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And with this, we are going to be ending Chapter 1. So thank you very much for being here and concluding with us in the exercise modules, and we'll see you soon.
Hello, we're starting Chapter 2 now with Analysis and Search in Advanced Reporting Interface. We're going to learn to use several search techniques for this chapter. First of all, we'll explore how we use the green, white, and gray concept in the Advanced Reporting tool. It's very valuable to understand that for the purpose of analysis. Green is the value that's selected when we use filtering mechanisms such as list boxes, and any other list boxes that reflect white. The white are associated values that are related to the selection that's made in green. And the gray area is any selection or values that are not related to your selection. For instance, if you have a market space which sells fruits such as apple, banana, and lime, you're going to try to see if you select apple, what types of apples you have. So in that market space, we have green and red apples, not yellow. So yellow is highlighted in gray. Those are non-associated values to your selection. Of course, this is not too pertinent to what we'll be looking at, so we'll look at more pertinent data and analyze it using the green, white, and gray concept. So stay tuned for more on this topic. We look at list boxes as our filtering mechanism, so you'll see several list boxes in one of our sample template sheets. And in the list box, on top of it, you'll see a search icon, which you can click and it'll open up a little box where you can type in your search criteria. Once you type in the search criteria, you can press enter to confirm the selection. You can also press escape or enter to leave the search box, and we'll show you exactly how that's done soon. We talked about the library in Chapter 1 a little bit, but here we'll describe this in a little bit more detail. The library contains several predefined objects that you can use to build the reports, so it makes it easier on the users where they do not have to think of what types of filters or charts, date objects that you can bring into the report. So here there are several list boxes, and maybe these won't fulfill the criteria for your report, but at least you have several to start out with. There are several date parameters that you can also bring in, and several chart options. Also, you have text and utility area where you can bring in your current selections box. The current selections box becomes very handy because there you can see the selections that you've been making as you go through your analysis. Here you can see we have quite a few exercises and activities set up for you in order to show you the many different types of searches that we have in the Advanced Reporting tool. So let's go back to our Advanced Reporting tool and start from the beginning where we actually take a look at several company files that are available to us. We're going to be working on the sample product-based business QuickBooks working file. So we'll click on Open here. At this point, ignore this and we'll get to the point where we can move into the Advanced Reporting project. So here we're at the start page of QuickBooks, and remember we need to go into the Reports tab and go to Advanced Reporting, and we're already in multi-user mode, so we're in good shape. Here you can opt to update the data or you can skip this. Right now I'll skip this because I've updated the data pretty recently. Once we do that, we have a dialog box that will come up shortly that will show you the option to pick some starter reports that we have already included in the Advanced Reporting tool. Clicking on that brings up several starter reports that have already been included, as well as some of my own reports that I've created from before. So let's open the Sales Profitability Starter Report. This is a file that's been provided for us in a QVT format. Once we open this, we'll see that there are already several visualizations available to us to work with, and we can modify this and rename it and use this for our own purpose by using basically some of these visualizations and changing them around a little bit. So some of the sales profitability is the title. You can bring that report title in from the text and utility area, but we're more interested in doing our searches and the search exercises by looking at the left hand side with the transaction date, filter, which is a list box, the item list box, and item type list boxes. So these are the list boxes we're going to be looking at for our current exercises. So the first one that we do is a very simple search that you can do. It's basically just typing in what we need to look for in the item list. And when we do that, we're just going to type in, for instance, the word hardware. And as you see, we haven't really confirmed this until we press enter. When we press enter, these three hardware values are shown in the item list. So anything that starts with hardware is shown basically. And this is all going to update the sheet objects for our hardware selection. So there are hardware brass hinges, hardware doorknobs, standard hardware LK doorknobs. I'm not sure what LK stands for. But so this is what's going to update with this selection. Anything in white in the transaction date are dates that basically relate to these hardware areas. And also these are inventory items. That's the white selection, means inventory items are related to these selections. So what we can do is if we scroll down on the transaction date, you'll see there are several grayed out dates. Those are dates that do not pertain to the hardware selection. So we may need to clear this before we do another exercise and another search. So you can do one of two things. You can clear everything, or you can clear one particular selection. So you may have a series of selections and you may not want to clear every single selection by using the clear all. You can individually clear a particular selection here. So let's clear all because there's only one selection right now. The next one that we'll do in the search technique is a wildcard search. In a wildcard search, we use the asterisk as a wildcard character. So when we type in something by clicking on the search in the item list box, we're going to type in cabinet. And cabinet can be spelled with all lowercase and it's not case sensitive, and an asterisk. And what it does, it still hasn't selected these until we press enter, but the asterisk means any number of characters after the word cabinet. So it's going to take into account the dash, the colon, and any other characters after the word cabinet. So once we press enter, it selects these three values. And of course, you have the transaction dates that pertain to these cabinets, whether they're being applied or they're being used. So, and then inventory and non-inventory item pertains to the cabinets. Now we're not sure which one is a non-inventory item or which one's an inventory item until we drill down further. So let's go take a look at some other types of searches. This was your wildcard search. So to clear this, we can hit the clear all button in our current selection box. The third exercise activity that we have in place for you has a pretty funny name to it. It's called fuzzy search. The fuzzy search pretty much will be helpful for those who are probably not very good at spelling, so that's going to be helpful to them. It's a character that we use, a tilde character, which is right under my escape key in my keyboard. It may be in a different location for you. But in order to do the fuzzy search, we're going to click again here with the search icon on the item list box, and we're going to type in a tilde first, and that marks that we're doing a fuzzy search. The fuzzy search fluorescent. I'm not very good at spelling fluorescent, but I'll sound it out and type it the way I think it should be spelled, which is probably incorrect. When I press enter, it picks what is the closest match to the fluorescent word that I typed out. And notice it picked out fluorescent ceiling lighting, and that is going to also show anything that's the transaction dates in white, that anything's related to fluorescent ceiling lighting, and its item type is a non-inventory item. So that shows you the green, white, and gray in action right here. More pertinent to our data than apple, banana, and lime that I showed you in the previous slide. We can also do something called an expression search. With an expression search, you're going to be using the greater than sign, the less than sign, greater than or equal to. And basically, that will just help you to eliminate some of the dates, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to use the expression search right here in the transaction date filter. And let's click on the search icon, and we're going to choose to represent dates that are greater than or equal to 1/1/2016. So let's type out greater than or equal to 1/1/2016. Press enter, and as you can see, all the dates are filtered after 1/1/2016. Anything before that will be in gray, as you see, all the dates. So this is a great filtering mechanism if you do not want to see all your dates. And those dates are representing selections of only transactions that have happened in the year 2016. Okay. We have another type of selection that we do, and sometimes what happens, you may want to exclude a certain type of selection. So for instance, you may want to see products that have not been sold in certain regions, or customers that haven't placed an order on a certain date. Sometimes it's easier to exclude these choices rather than include them. So in our case, we'll first do a selection with the word sub and asterisk. So anything that starts with sub in our item list, we're going to pick that with the wildcard star. We've used that before, and it's basically, when we press enter, it'll pick all the items that start with the word sub and any characters after that. But we want to actually exclude these, not include these in our selection. So to make this easier, first we include it, then we right click on this list box and we say select excluded. That will choose everything but the items that start with subs. So if you look closely in the gray area, it's excluded anything that starts with subs. So that might come in handy sometime when you want to exclude certain parameters. Okay, so now we have another type of search that we're going to do that is basically going to filter down on certain parameters that are that probably have more choices, and you would like to take a look at the choices but you're not sure, and that is going to be basically using what we call this chevron, this maybe double chevron or chevron. And if we type, for instance, under item type payment, and we use the chevron, we see that anything that starts with payment drills down to the right. This is just additional filters. And if you scroll down, you would probably want to pick the one that says payment item. Once you see that, press enter. It selects payment item under item type, and it filters the data for payment item. So that is just the chevron, just gives you more parameters to make choices under when you start with the word payment. So that is using the chevron, and that will point to another list to the right, and that'll give you more choices with the word that you put in. So now what we'll take a look at is your library. The library on the left hand side is what I was talking about before, but I will show it to you in action. So what we see in the library are chart. These are charts that have been already set up for you. They may not fulfill your criteria for what you need to do, but at least you have several charts that are already predefined and preset for you. Then you also will have several list boxes that are shown here in the list box area. These list boxes also may not suit what you need to do, but they are at least there to give you a starting point. Some of these may or may not even have data depending on where the data is being loaded from, and if they do not have data, that is pretty much up to you to know and understand where the data is coming from, what data that you have from your company file, and to use list boxes that represent that data. So these are already preset by a developer. You will have several tables that are set up for you, and in the text and utility you have your report title that you can bring in, your current selections box, which is right up here that we used, and here's your report title, your current selections box, and comments and subtitle and search all fields. So all of these can be brought in from the text and utility area. So that is your library area, and there are a lot of predefined values there. In your list boxes, you can see basically several types of searches. For instance, if we clicked on maybe appliance, you have several transaction dates that are related to appliance. And that is a basically one-to-many type of search where you have one type of search category and has several transaction dates. But you might have a one-to-one relationship where the appliance is only a non-inventory item. So it's only one-to-one relationship here. So appliance may be either non-inventory item or inventory item. Counter here is a non-inventory item either. So that's more of a one-to-one search. Okay. So this is pretty much a database concept where you're looking at the type of search. It's one-to-many or one-to-one relationship that is shown by picking an item and seeing the relationships. We have one final search for you here in this chapter, and that is an OR search. This is a very important search because OR basically says that if you pick multiple items, you don't want to deselect one if you choose the other items. So if you pick appliance right now, it will pick the transaction dates and the item type related to the item. And then if you go and pick counter, it deselects appliance. But you may want to pick multiple items. So how do we do that without having the previous selection deselected? So what we do is counter is selected. If I want to pick appliance and then custom cabinets, I would hit Control button and then left click on appliance, left click on custom cabinets, and it would pick all three. That's basically an OR search. That means you're looking for transactions date for appliance or for cabinets custom or for counter. And that gives you more values when you pick multiple choices. So if you pick just one and then pick the next one without holding control key down, it's going to deselect your first selection. So very important to remember that. Multiple searches, you're going to have to hit the control key and pick several selections. So that is all for this chapter. Thank you for being here, and stay tuned for chapter 3 where we'll discuss creating a new report from a starter report. Thank you. Hi, this is chapter 3. We're going to be talking about how to create a basic report from scratch in chapter 3. There are several very important objectives here in this chapter that we're going to discuss. One of them is understanding the concepts of dimension and measures. They're very, very important concepts as they're used frequently for charting purposes and for most all of the visualizations. So we do need to understand what dimensions and measures are. We also need to understand the different file types we'll be working with in the advanced reporting tool. We'll create list boxes, which will help us to filter the data. We're going to use the library in a much more active way than we have before. And in Master Calendar, we're going to talk about how we can bring in some date parameters that will be useful to us in our reporting and analysis. So dimensions and measures. Let's understand what dimensions are first of all. Dimensions are generally field values that come in, and they're going to be either discrete values or attributes that we're going to chart over. So they can be parameters such as year, month, some sort of transaction full name, maybe a customer name, job type name. So those are examples of dimensions where they're not generally calculated values. So when you ask the question, what am I going to chart over? Am I going to chart over year or month or customer? That is going to be your dimension when you answer that question. Measures are going to be your calculations or expressions, and generally you will name a measure as sales, so it's almost like a label, but then the measure could have an expression attached to it, which could be something quite lengthy. But to make it easier for people to relate to it, we call it a measure, and that measure is like a label. So advanced reporting file types, we have a few different file types in there that are important for your work, and one of them is QVR. .qvr file extension is used to import and export a report file into your advanced reporting tool. A .qbt file is a report template file that helps you basically to create reports without having to start from scratch. So you will see several report templates there in your report list, and you can use them, modify them, create them, and put them into a different name, and then generally it makes life very easy. .qbr file extension basically is used to import and export a report file into the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting. There are three ways to import a QBR file. One method is to select Import from the Reports button drop-down in the Advanced Reporting homepage. Another way is to use the Report List button and select the Import button from the top right-hand side of the Report List dialog box. And the third method is to use the icon that you see in the Report toolbar, which is right underneath the Reports and Report List buttons. QBD is another special type of file extension. QBDs are very important to use because they help to load the data much faster than other data files. They basically contain one table of data that's exported from backend scripts, and it's a native QlikView format, so they're created basically by QlikView and can only be opened by QlikView. Fortunately for us, our backend is the technology from QlikView for the advanced reporting tool. So it allows us to use QVDs to load up data very quickly. And it's in a compressed and very compact format that makes it very useful for loading the data. Now, QVDs, you do not need to worry about modifying them or learning how to create them. It's done generally by a database administrator, system administrator, or maybe a developer. So all you need to do is basically use them. List boxes are a special type of filtering mechanism. We basically get them from fields that come in from tables, and what we do is we put them on our sheet, and they're called sheet objects. So list boxes will basically show you what are some of the field values. For instance, in the item list box, you see all the list box values for the item. For the transaction date, you will see all the transaction dates in this list box. If you do not see all of the values in the window, you have a scroll bar on the right hand side that will allow you to see the other values. The green, white, and gray is very important here in the list boxes because it allows you to see what is selected in the green, and then you see what is basically associated with your selection and what is not associated in the gray with the selection that you made. So in the library, we have several different components to the library that are very important for you to use. So you do not have to start from scratch. So your library contains several date parameters, many chart objects, list box objects for filtering, and also text utility objects, and several tables as well. If these do not fulfill your criteria, then you might be able to create them from scratch as well, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. The text and utility object area can be expanded, and they have the most important current selections box, which really helps you to see what users are selecting in the current selections box. When you want to add an object from the library, all you need to do is double click on the object and it adds it directly to your sheet. If you do not see the library objects on the left-hand side, it may be that it's collapsed. So you have to go to the top left-hand side where you have the library button and just click on that to see the library components. The master calendar is a special type of table. It's a dimensional table that links the dates to your company file. So pretty much might want to extract different date parameters and put it into a table format, and it'll show you all the field values for the different date parameters such as month, year, transaction, transaction date, quarter year, week, and day. So these will be the date parameters that you might want to use in order to do some analysis. So that's master calendar is very helpful for doing that. So what we'll do is we're going to be going and performing some activities that will help us create a report using the start from scratch method. We're going to create some list boxes, and we're going to display a master calendar. So we have a few activities that are going to be very helpful in getting you going with this report. Let's go back to our advanced reporting tool. And right now we're at the home page for QuickBooks. Let's go to the reports and click on advanced reporting. Here we can click on our report list, and that brings up several starter reports that start with this little S icon in the left-hand side. But rather than doing that, we can use the Start from Scratch template, which is just pretty much an empty palette, and we can click on Open, and we can maximize this. And as you can see, the library panel has been expanded, so we can use that right away. So in the library panel, we can pick up some list boxes if we wanted to do it that way. So the first objective for us to do is to populate this sheet with some list boxes. So the easiest way to do that is to use some of the predefined list boxes. So let's expand the list box area, and we might want to bring in maybe some customer jobs. Double click that. Perhaps we will bring in some items under class. And notice once we double click, one list box goes on top of the other, so you have to move it down in order to see it. And we might want to look at the items list and item type. So here's item type. Once again, it's on top of one of the other list boxes, so we move it down. And the final one that we want to add is items list. Okay, so we have all our list boxes here. We may also want to get from text and utility the current selections box. Double click that and you will have added this. If you are having a hard time moving this, a nice trick is to use this Alt button, and you'll see this cross, and that will help you to move that pretty easily. So all the objects can generally be moved by using the Alt button. So if you're having a hard time moving these objects, you can use the Alt button. When you see the cross, move it around the sheet. Okay, so we've added some list boxes by using the library. But what if we don't see what we want in the library list box area? We can also go in to the sheet, right click, and use Select Fields. Select Fields will allow us to grab all the fields that we need that we don't see in the library. So if you click on that, you will see all the fields from all the tables that are coming in to our report. So here it's showing all the tables. So you may want to sometimes filter on just one specific table to get certain field names. So let's go to the shipping method table. We'll go there, shipping method, and look how it's filtered down to all the fields that are in the shipping method table. We only have 5 fields, so it makes it much easier to choose from this when you filter it down to one table. We're going to pick shipping method name and shipping method time created. So click on this and click on the add, and then time created and add. Do not delete the previous ones because that will delete it from what we've added already. And then hit OK. So now these are on this side, and if we don't want it to be cluttered on the left hand side, we can put it on the right hand side. And there you have it. So we have created current selections box, we have created some list boxes, we have brought in list boxes from the library and added our own list boxes from select fields. And now we're going to learn how to display a master calendar that will show us some date parameters. So let's see how we can do that. Right click on an empty space here and go to New Sheet Object. It's a table box. A table box basically just combines several different fields into columns in a table format. So what we'll do is we'll pick the ones that we want. We want some date parameters, so we'll choose month and month year. To get to that quickly, we just type the first letter. It takes us to that area, and we can use the control button to pick both of these and add it. We could do the same thing for quarter and quarter year. Type Q and it will take us to the area, and then use the control button to pick both of them and then add them to the right hand side. We might also want to pick year, week, and day. So year, Y will also, you can double click on this to add it to the right hand side. Year, week, and day. So week, W brings us to week. D, day, double click on that, And the last one is transactions.transaction date. We know pretty much that that would be in the transactions table. So we'll go down to picking the transactions table, and we'll scroll down and find transactions.transaction date. Here we go. This is the one we want, and then add it. And just say OK at this point, and it adds a table box with all our date parameters that we've chosen, and it shows that. And it shows the connections from one field value to a next. So if we pick a certain month and year combination, it'll filter down to all the ones that belong with that. So all the associations with the month year parameter that we chose. So this way we see all the connections from one field to another in a table box. Thank you very much. We are going to conclude Chapter 3 here, and we'll see you in Chapter 4 when we talk about foundations of a wonderful user interface design. Thank you. Hello, we're in the Basic Training Module 1, and this is Chapter 4 where we talk about foundations of a powerful user interface and design. The objectives of this chapter is basically to explain some basic design concepts, which will be incredibly useful for your reports, identify how to create a consistent user interface, and also explain the best practice for use of layout, fonts, and colors. So this might be a very busy dashboard, analogous to a dashboard. When you look at the Times Square image, there might be billboards that one person finds interesting, another person finds another billboard that might be more interesting. So to each person, there might be something of interest, but then we are not focusing on what is very important here at that point in time. So what might be more important, we need to focus on that and probably to display it in a more prominent way. So analogous to our dashboard, we might want to take the Stanley Cup and put it in a more prominent place. So we focus on that. So in our dashboard, any sheet objects that are important, for instance, KPIs that are going to be important information, should be highlighted and placed in a prominent position. So that would help to make it much more clear for users what is the most important information there on the dashboard. We like to stay with the principle of less is more, because if you look at this bar chart, what does your eye focus on? It goes right to the background image, which is not what we want to see. We want to look at the data. Also, the three-dimensionality is not necessary here. Just the X and Y axis is important for the data representation. So do not have any distractions in your charting. Less is more. This pretty much sticks to the philosophy of less is more. Sometimes we'll use data in graphical elements, and that will encode the data in various ways. We can look at it in terms of position, length, color, shape, but what is most important is when we are encoding the data, we need to find out which one is going to be interpreted in a more valuable way. When we look at it in terms of ranking of quantitative perceptual ranking of more important or more accurate to less accurate, we see that positioning is more important in determining how we perceive quantity. After that comes length, then angle, volume, area, then volume, and then color. Color is not as important. For example, if you have a value of 1.5 in your data, the users are more likely to interpret the value if it's encoded in a position in a scatter plot rather than maybe an area in a pie chart. We have something called pre-attentive processing, where we're looking at something and processing the data without doing heavy analysis. So if you want to find 3 in a series of numbers, in the first row of numbers, it gets pretty difficult to find the 3. But when you look at the second row of numbers, 3 stands out because you've highlighted that in a contrasting color. So pre-attentive processing basically means the symbol is made pretty obvious without having to do too much conscious engagement. A highlighted symbol is found very easily and quickly. And the first row contains the same data, but naturally if you're looking for 3, it's much easier to find it in the second row. So this is pre-attentive processing where you don't have to do heavy analysis. Other ways of using pre-attentive processing works when you are using, for instance, orientation or shape, size, groupings, any kind of length, width changes, color, intensity, any direction of motion. So we always like to find patterns where our mind is designed to find patterns. If the pattern breaks, then we kind of look at it and we question why the pattern broke. Lack of clarity. In this, it's a comical way of looking at how uh, this images lack clarity. So the first image has too many road signs, and that can get very confusing. The one on the top right, God knows what might happen to your car if you leave it there. So it's pretty humorous to see some of this road signage that lacks clarity. And that could be something that you would want to be careful of in the icons you place or images in your own sheets. Clarity can come about even if you have a different language with symbols that are meaningful and that can be processed easily. So this means straight, left, and right, and generally icons that are easy to figure out. If you have icons that are generic that maybe can be misinterpreted, you may want to place a text object next to it in order to clarify what that object truly means. Tell the truth. A lot of charting doesn't tell the truth. Sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's not as subconscious. It's probably predetermined that we'll show this chart this way just to highlight what we want to highlight. And effects without causes can cause problems in showing graphs with that. Cherry picking can also cause problems. Incorrectly inferring causality from correlation is another way of showing wrong data or inappropriately showing the data. You might have inappropriate comparisons in context. Dequantification and exaggeration are terms also used to show how data can be skewed in some manner. So for instance, in this chart, the line chart shows a crime rate going up along with the CO2 levels. Now, these two coincidentally happen to be on the rise, whether this x-axis is about time, month, week, whatever the time dimension. The CO2 levels are going up, but the crime rate's going up, but they have no correlation to each other and should not be correlated in the same chart. For instance, we also have this chart, which is a comic strip chart, and it's pretty funny to see that shaved heads, the rise in shaved heads kind of emulate the rise in sales, but there's no correlation to that. For instance, here in our country, we have No Shave November now, and during that time, I'm sure the number of bearded men, the rise in the number of people who have beards rises quite high, and the sales will also rise pretty high because it's pre-holiday season in November. So if we were to chart those two, you'd also see a rise and a spike up there. So there is really no correlation in the data, but you should not have to present that in this way. Cherry picking happens when you pick data points to plot without picking all of them. So you're picking only the points that you want people to see. So that is not a right way to do that. Also, exaggeration happens if you basically showing certain points and not showing the right axes. There's dequantification if you don't show the legends or axis labels and take out several graphical entities that help put the data in context. So without context, the viewer can interpret only relative features within the data. So you do not want to have exaggeration. Sometimes you might have inappropriate comparisons where you're showing the revenue by year, but you're not accounting for the inflation in this expression. So then it's going to give you erroneous data. Exaggeration is shown here again. So when you change scales, sometimes you see exaggeration happen in your charting. Okay, so the scales are very important. How you define the scales in your charting is important because that will define whether you see exaggeration or not. Sometimes exaggeration does work. In this chart, for instance, your scale has changed from the bottommost one, and notice you do not see as much of the rise and fall in the data as you do in the top one. So the top one actually benefits from showing some exaggeration. Okay, so you do see the data peaks and the valleys in this by changing the axis scale. We always need to design for a good resolution, and the optimum resolution has to be pretty much tested because you're designing an app that should be pretty easily visible in a good way on different platforms. You may want to look at it on an iPad or any type of iPhone or Samsung or Android or tablet, or maybe even laptops and desktops. So you want to make sure the optimum resolution will be able to display properly on all those different platforms. Okay. When we say unimportant and highlight that font and that text, it's a contradictory kind of word. It is very important to put down text in a certain font size and type. It becomes important, the size. The size does matter, typography matters, what font type you're using matters, okay? So all of that does matter. You can also use header styling to basically make fonts stand out, and you can use contrast as well. And here, as I pointed out before, if you have a head and shoulders icon, you may want to put a text box next to it to elaborate what this means. It can mean many number of things. Also, a computer little monitor screen icon can mean a lot of different things. Also, these numbers are standing out and aligned with the text to give it some meaning. We use sans serif fonts generally without embellishments, and list boxes are minimum 10 point, 11 points if possible. Tables are at minimum 9 point. Legends minimum 8 point. We can go a little bit lower in font size with the legends, and we avoid the Calibri font. Layout and hierarchy pretty important in our scheme of things because where the object's positioned and size and their relationship to each other tells you a story. So if they're related to each other, they're positioned together. Also, if you don't realize it, you might try to think about this, but your eye moves from the top left to the bottom right. So you want to place your most important objects on the top or the left side. So most of the time you'll see navigation. Good navigation should be more on the left-hand side. So when a design lacks hierarchy, what happens? The user tends to get confused. He or she does not know which way to start. And if all the fonts are the same, everything looks the same in hierarchy, then the user has confusion. Here you see alignment. So the alignment of these objects show that they should be together. They belong together. Also, sometimes we use the background grid to help us align objects. This will not remain in the final app, but it's useful for a technique to align objects together. When we're done, we can take out the grid. 7 to 10% of the people in the world are colorblind. Most of them are male, so we want to consider designing for colorblind audiences. So here, if you look at the left-hand side, you see red and green. Contrast appears without any contrast to a colorblind person. If you impose some sort of blue factor in the right-hand side, you will see some element of contrast. So the red and green apples here are basically shown as all golden apples, pretty much. Some people also have a small percentage of them have the blue and yellow, deciphering the contrast in the blue and yellow. And to them, it may look something like this on the right-hand side. So we do need to be conscious of those people who have colorblindness and those problems with the colors. Once again, you see that this scatter plot has green and red. To a colorblind person, it is pretty much all this beige, deep beige color. We also have this kind of possible type of color sequences that we can use in our color scheme. So in here, what we see is that we're going to have a sequential type of color scheme where it goes from a lower saturation to higher saturation. So the values that can be attributed here might be lower values, and the ones in the deeper colors could be a higher value. So this is pretty much a sequential scheme in coloring. What happens is the divergent gradient. This is called divergent gradient or divergent gradient. This one basically has a scheme where you go from a deep red to a blue. And what happens, it traverses with some value of intensity up here, goes into middle range, which has probably the lowest value, and then works itself to the other range. Okay, so that's a divergent gradient. So this is sometimes useful when you are going to represent anything with positive values in one range and negative values in the other, and your middle value might be 0. Or you might want to show something that is above average in one range and below average, and the middle could be your average value. So divergent gradient is pretty important for that. A qualitative type of approach just basically doesn't show any kind of ordering or any kind of relationship in the color scheme. It just uses a selection of distinct colors. So for color best practices, it's important not to really use a rainbow gradient. And that rainbow gradient has absolutely no meaning in your color spectrum. Using some sort of sequential range in colors might have meaning. So you might have a very light color that symbolizes lowest values, and the deepest color might have the largest values. So here we see a saturated versus desaturated color scheme. So different colors carry different weights. So when you're looking at color saturation, it's an important consideration. So the saturated colors are the most rich and deepest colors, and the desaturated ones are the lighter colors, which carry the less weight. So you might decide you want to have the higher values in the saturated spectrum. Desaturated can have lower values. Color can encode values, so it can be a powerful tool for encoding data. It's not only used for aesthetic qualities, but also for encoding the value of data. So here you could see the higher saturation symbolizes the higher values and percentages, and the lower saturation is the desaturated values are lower. We can also make use of color relationships. So we see that colors share a relationship with each other, which you can use to show the relationship between data. So whether you're showing the progression by using tints, or you're showing contrast as in this bottom left-hand chart. The monotonous scheme here is basically just to show the differences in the data. The greater saturation can be linked to higher numbers, as I said before. You can also use minimal hues. Sometimes colors have strong personalities. When their strong colors are used together with all together with many different strong colors, they fight for attention on the same sheet. So you want to avoid that. Sometimes you want to just have minimal hues, so you focus on the ones that are the most important information and it's highlighted in a certain color. You should use color to highlight. So basically use soft neutral colors to display other information, but the brighter one should be showing you important data. So you want to highlight the important data by using color to highlight it. And you might want to use color emphasis to highlight some KPIs. So if you need KPIs for margin percentage or sales, you would like to emphasize it using different colors. We have a slide that shows meaningful data, and this meaningful data is colored in various ways. Now this kind of color scheme has absolutely no meaning. It doesn't mean anything because you're using a rainbow set of colors, which absolutely has no meaning. So what we can do is we can change this around to give it a little bit more meaning. First of all, we can try to strip all the color and just go on the value of the data. So if you look at the bars and the height of the bars, that's pre-attentive processing. We know that this bar chart representing Davenport product is doing better in sales than maybe the extras. So this is kind of meaningful even without having to use any color scheme. But if we did want to use a color scheme, we could try to use something where we show by category. So blue is men's clothes, and then women's wear is red in the red hues. And we can see that with pre-attentive processing that the men's clothes are doing much better than the women's. So here the bar charts are standing much higher than the women's wear. And then we have different categories. Baby wear is in orange. We can pre-attentively process which ones are which by just looking at the color legend. We also can use the saturation and desaturation in our meaningful data chart because we can say the brightest, deepest hue is for the largest value, and it fades away into the smallest values for the lightest colors and the desaturated value, the color spectrum. Here we're using a divergent gradient, so the lime green or the bright green is used for one side of the spectrum, and then the deepest blue is used for the other side. So it's going from the highest values to the lowest values by going through a divergent gradient. And the average middle values could be in this lighter shade of green and gray. So this is a divergent gradient. When we look at this chart finally, we see the before, and everything that's wrong with this we can point out. Is the most visible problem with this is the red and green. It stands out too bright, and then it's not good for the colorblind audience. There's no hierarchy here, so all the font sizes are the same. There's no visualization, and it's hard to tell where we will navigate from. Which side do we navigate from in our analysis, left or right? And our current selections is pretty much hidden where it should be prominent to see the current selections box. And pretty much there's white space where there is really no need for white space. So it lacks visualization, it lacks hierarchy. The red and green color scheme should be taken away, and we need to do a better job of formatting this so there is better navigation. So when we change this around, the after shows you how much cleaner it can get when we redesign this. So with this, we end chapter 4. We hope you learned a lot from our design techniques, and we'll hope that you can apply this when we go further down into the chapters and we create many more visualization and sheet objects. So keep all the design techniques in mind for all of your later development. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We're starting Chapter 5, which is building an advanced reporting user story. So let's define what a user story is. It's pretty much a simple statement about what a user may want to do with an app, and it cannot be in too much of a technical jargon or does not really elaborate on all the design elements in detail. So it serves to provide a goal when you're building an app for users who will be using the app to do analysis or answer their questions. Pretty much it's formulated as the line shown below. So as a user role, which is you're going to fill in the user role, I want to have a certain goal so I can use this app for a reason. So pretty much if you were building this app for a CEO or a finance manager or a CFO, you're going to try to fill in the blank on what the user role is, what they want to do with this app, and what reason they have for using this app. So pretty much, for instance, you might say as a CEO, I want to improve the company's performance so I can make the company grow further in different markets worldwide. So that would be pretty much a user story for a CEO. And then you can go on and build it for other users for the same app and have a flexible app with different visualizations that can basically deliver a story for many different types of users in one app. So this is why you would like to do a user story. You would like to have a more definitive goal when you're building the app. It makes it more constructive, it makes it more flexible, and it makes it definitely much more organized to create a user story. So let's go back to our advanced reporting page, and what we're going to do is we're going to build a user story. So in our case, what we're going to show you first is one that's already been built, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to get to that point. So I'm going to move this here a little bit, and let's go to our advanced reporting tool. This is one that's already been built, but we're going to do the exact same one. So this is called Sales by City, Job, and Customer Dashboard. So we have here basically several filters: customer, job type, and cities. They're called list boxes. We have a current selections box. We have the dates. We have the title. We have 3 different visualizations. There's a pie chart, a bar chart and a pivot table. So we're going to add all of these, but in order to do this, we're going to start the report from scratch. So let's go into this little tab here that says Report List, and we get this dialog box, which allows us to take this last option and start the report from scratch. So we're going to click on the Open button, and we have an empty palette here. So let's wait till this comes up, and we see that on the left-hand side we have the library, right? The library, as we said before, gives us some predefined ability to add different elements here into this report. So the first thing that pretty much you want to start out with is giving this a title, right? So what we'll do is we're going to just double click on this report title, and it just drops it in here. And it drops it in there, but we don't want to call it a report title, right, Phil? We're going to give it a title. So what do you think we'll do? To get into here, and every sheet object, this is also considered a sheet object, we can right-click on this to get to the properties. Once we do that, in the General tab, in this text box, we're going to type out the report title. And in this title, we're going to type out sales by city, comma, job type, and customer dashboard. So let's type that out. Sales by city, comma, job type, and customer dashboard. Okay? And then we can say OK, and that changes it. Notice there's something interesting going on with the ellipses. It doesn't show the whole thing. Why do you think that is, Phil?
Because the field box isn't big enough to show the whole report
Right.
title.
So how do you think we can edit this? What do you think you might do to edit it? What would we do to get into the edit mode of this box?
Right-click where it says sales by city by job type and choose properties.
Excellent. You're such a good student, Phil. Proud of you.
Well.
And then what we can do is here, I think we're going to go into layout. And sometimes it helps to have a border width around the box. So we can do some moving the box around. We can change it. I always like to set this border width and then change it back to 0, just so I can see the box. And when I do that, I can now see the handles more easily. And when I click on the handle and drag it, now the box expands so I can see the whole title of this report. And then I can just drag this, and you see that cross that shows up. I can drag it to wherever I want, and I would like to drag it to the center. Now if you want to get rid of this border, you can do that by going back to Properties and in Layout, making this 0 border width. Now that's one way to do this. If you prefer the border around it, that's up to you. You can have that as well. But anyway, I took out the border, but sometimes the border is necessary for you to move it easily. It just helps to move that very easily. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the library area, and we're going to bring in a date. So what we need to do is we're not going to think too much about how we're going to create all the different date elements. They have done the work for us. So we're just going to go to this transaction and double click on that, and has pre-formatted year, month, and quarter established there. So we don't have to do much work. It's already in there. Okay. So we have the date, we have the title, and now we're getting ready to add some sheet objects. Now sheet objects can be anything. They can be charts, they can be tables, they can be list boxes. So let's start out by adding a bar chart. Okay. We're going to add a bar chart. But before we do that, let's add a current selections box too, because current selections box, as I said, was very important. You get to see all the selections you're making. So under text and utility, you have the option to pick current selections. Let's double click on that, and that just adds it right up here in the top left corner. And it's good to have it on the top left because it's easily visible. So we're going to keep it there. Okay. And then we're going to move into creating a bar chart as our first sheet object. What we'll do is we're going to right click on the sheet and select New Sheet Object. and new sheet object, there's an arrow pointing to the right. We're going to go fifth option down. It's chart. This gives you all the various chart types. Okay. And in here, you see that under chart type, you have various different selections that you can make for chart type. But let's give it a window title. And in the window title, we're going to type sales by city and job type. That's the name of the bar chart. Sales by city and job type. Okay. And sometimes we prefer to see the title in the chart. Sometimes it's too cluttered that way, and we opt not to. It's all based on what you want to do for the design. So I'm going to opt not to show the title. I uncheck that, and I move to the chart type. It's already highlighted with the bar chart. See the little yellow frame around it? It means bar chart is highlighted. So we're good with that. And then we're going to click Next. Are you with me so far, Phil? Are you good? I hope I'm not leaving you behind.
Nope, you're good. I just saw a box on the other side that had bar chart and a bunch of other charts and stuff
Oh,
on it.
okay.
What are
Let me
those
go
for?
back a little bit. This one, are you talking about this?
Yeah, the fast type change
Oh, okay.
software.
That's an interesting option. We never want to click here when we are just first creating our chart. And this one is pretty much, I will explain later on when we need to use a fast type change. It's a very good question, and I'm going to get to that because we're going to use that in a little bit to enhance our chart. Okay, so if you hold on for a little bit, I will definitely explain when it's good to use that. But for now, when we pick a chart type, we always want to focus in this area to pick our initial chart type.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. So here what we need to do is now we pick dimensions in this dialog box. See, it top left says dimensions. Now dimensions are on the left-hand side. These basically come from your table. Your table data brings in the fields, which become your dimensions. They're generally not calculated, but they can be calculated dimensions as well. But these that are coming on the left-hand side are coming from the table data. So what we can do is either we could scroll down, and as you can see, this one has a ton of options for dimensions. So if we want to narrow down what we want to pick, if we know the table it's coming from, we can actually, under Show Fields from Table, pick the table, and that limits down the fields within that table. So we know that one of the fields is going to be transactions.bill address city, excuse me. And that means that we need to go to the transactions table. If we go to the transactions table, it pretty much limits down the table that we're going to get this from. So transactions table is highlighted. We're just picking the fields from there. And we're going to scroll down and go to transactions.bill address city. And when we see that, bill address city right here, we're going to highlight that and then add it to the use dimensions list. That's one dimension, but they also want us to pick another dimension. But before we do that, it's always a good practice to label this. Now, we label this so that it's a friendly name for the label, so we're not seeing transactions.bill address city. If it's a long name, then it's going to be cumbersome. So we put the label here as city, simply city, okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to click on another dimension from the left-hand side. This time, we're not sure exactly where that dimension is coming from. It's job type.full name, but we're not sure what table it's in. So in order to make sure that we avoid any problems, we're going to select all tables. And then we don't want to scroll up and down necessarily. So if we click on one of these and just start typing job type, as you can see, it gets to the JOB section. And here you have job type full name. When you pick that, click add to add it to the right-hand side. So when you're here with a lot of different options and you don't want to scroll up and down looking for something, you could start typing the first few letters in the name and it will take you to that area. Okay. Does that make sense, Bill?
It does. I'm just a little confused on how you knew which dimensions to choose from. Is there a dictionary or anything that shows the different dimensions and what they are?
There are pretty much data dictionaries out there, and the basic resource list in the Chapter 12 might give you some common ones that we might list, but here there are some data definitions that's there and in your help area, so that might give you some guidance. But these are basically coming from your tables, so a lot of the developers will be able to guide you as to what field names have what meanings, but some of them are pretty much explanatory. So if you're looking for maybe job type, it might come under job type full name. Transactions, bill address, city means any kind of city that's related to the transactions with a billing. There is also a transactions, I believe, address city, so you have to be careful which one you pick. So you need to kind of know your data at this point a little bit, but some of them are defined in a data dictionary on a website. So, but that's a very good question. Okay. Now what we need to do is after you've defined the dimensions, we click Next. Next takes you to what is called an expression editor. So this expression editor is where you're going to type out your expression. Okay. Now to type out the expression, you're going to build it from here, and what we are going to type out is going to start out with an aggregation function, right? So we're going to type out the expression that starts with sum, and I always like to put the parentheses because I'm going to build from outside in. I put the two parentheses in so I do not forget the closing parentheses, and then I know that I'm going to look for the field transactions, and notice how it's pulling down all the fields that start with transactions. It's pretty much called IntelliSense. If it finds a name that matches it, it's going to fill it in. So as soon as I see something that matches what I want, the field name, here again, you need to know a little bit about your data. The transactions amount with sign basically gives you positive values of the transactions. So we're going to pick this one for our value for the transactions. So we're doing a sum over the transactions, but that's not all we're going to do. We're going to add a set expression here. The set expression is going to start out with curly brackets. So I'm going to put a set of curly brackets and work from outside in so I do not forget the curly brackets. And then within that, I'm going to put the construct, which is a modifier with an angle bracket and a closing greater than sign, which we'll talk about further in the advanced class what the set expression format is, but it always starts out with the curly brackets first. Within this, we're going to put a syntax, which is going to look a little unfamiliar, but I'm going to explain what that is very soon. We're going to put this V expression sales, which basically filters down your value here. So now, if you look up here, it says your expression is okay, but we want to make sure that we have the closing sets of parentheses, closing sets of curly brackets, closing less than, greater than, modifier signs, another one here, which is the variable parentheses. So the variables are defined in this advanced reporting with a dollar sign and in parentheses the name of the variable. But here, if you make a mistake with the variable, it will give you an error in the values. So V expression sales, if you want to double check, you can also go into the variables and pull down this and try to find out what that variable has. And this is actually what the delimiters for that variable is. So you can see this long kind of filtering that's going on within the variables. It's set up to look at transactions account type, which is only income, transactions pending, which is a value of 0, and transaction type, which is either going to be invoice, sales receipt, credit memo, charge, or ARR refund. Now, Phil, maybe you can explain a little bit more about what this means when you have a transactions pending of 0. Does that mean that the transaction's still pending, or it's paid for and it's not pending anymore? How would you explain the transactions not pending equal to 0?
Transactions pending equals 0 means that no. 1 would equal yes, and that would be to check the status of an estimate to see if it's in a pending state or not.
Okay. So we're filtering on ones that basically have not been paid, right? So the transactions pending is 0 there. So all these are other criteria, and that all is bundled into this variable with a set expression. Okay? So that is how we build this expression, and if everything is okay, your expression okay tells you it's okay. And then you can click this OK button here, and then your expression goes here, but this is a very long expression, and you do not want to use that as a label for this. So what we're going to type in there is going to be sales revenue for this label. Okay, so you don't want to see this whole expression. So to be very concise and brief, in our labeling, we want to have an appropriate label, and we call it sales revenue. Okay, are you with me so far, Phil? Everything good on your end?
It is looking good.
Okay, so we go to the sort tab next. So sometimes you can sort by descending order, by ascending order, and in here we're going to actually sort by the same expression. So what you can actually do to help your case is maybe copy this expression. So you want to click on this ellipses. The ellipses basically tells you that you can get back to the expression editor and maybe make some changes if you made a mistake or you want to change the set expression again. Here, let's do a Control-C and copy this expression because we're going to need this very soon. So let's close this, and then we're going to go to the next. And in the Sort tab, they're saying let's sort, okay, and uncheck the state. And we're going to use instead the expression to sort, okay? Select the descending, and in here, let's click on the ellipses, and we're going to paste this expression there. So we're sorting by expression here. And we can also click on the text. Next takes us to the Style tab, where we're going to basically do a stacked bar chart. So it will look like this. Okay. The stacked bar chart. And then we're going to go and pick, let's see what else we pick here. We're going to go to next twice. And we're going to go to the Axes tab. And in the Axes, we're going to make the dimension labels on an angle. Sometimes it looks cluttered if you don't have it at an angle, so we're going to put this at an angle. Okay, and we're going to finish. So here we have our stacked bar chart. Okay. Any questions, Phil?
No.
Anything that you have? Okay, great. So here we have our first bar chart, and we have some more changes that we can make to this, but we'll go along and finish up some of the other visualizations, okay? So we'll do that, and then we'll try to enhance our charts. Now what we need to do is we're going to create a pie chart. That's our second visualization. So what do you think we need to do in order to create another chart? Phil, any guesses?
We'll need to create a new sheet object or clone the one we have.
Very good. So you can start from scratch by creating a pie chart by right-clicking, going to New Sheet Object, Chart, and selecting Pie Chart. But there's another little tip or trick that you can do. You can right-click on the bar chart, okay, and actually say Clone. And when you clone this, it creates a replica of this bar chart. Now, why do we do that? Because then sometimes we may not need to change the expression or change the dimensions. Maybe we can use one of the dimensions here. So sometimes it makes it easier if we clone it and just change one or two parameters within the chart. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to right-click on this and go to Properties. And the Properties takes us to the properties of this bar chart. Right now it's still not a pie chart, so we still have this as a bar chart. So what we'll go is do the General tab right here, go to the General tab, and we're going to change the name of this, right? It's not Sales by City Job Type, but we're going to make this a Sales by Customer. So type this into the window title. Again, we have this unchecked, which is fine. And now in the chart type, we're going to look for the pie chart, which is third in the bottom row, and we're going to click on that. The yellow halo is around the pie chart, so that's selected. Okay, so we are there. Now, notice because we've already cloned this, all the tabs appear for this. So we're not clicking on next to get to the next tab. So let's go and change the dimensions. Here, what they want us to do is they want us to change the existing dimensions a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in another one called customer.parent full name. Okay. We're going to remove these two. We don't need them anymore, but we're going to add customer.parent full name. So remember, this chart is called sales by customer, right? So the dimensions naturally, Phil, to answer your questions, we're going to look for something that has customer information. So let's type in CUST and customer, scroll down a little bit and look for customer parent full name. Parent full name, and then we add this to the right, okay? And then we're going to label this customer simply down here, customer, okay? And another thing we're going to do is we do not want to have null values, so we're going to suppress the value when it's null. So check that off.
Oh, I do have a question on the bar
Sure.
chart. On
Yeah.
the bar chart that I see, you've got a little dash, and then you have repairs, remodel, new construction.
Yeah.
What's the dash for?
That is the null value. See, since we didn't uncheck this when we had added the two dimensions, we were getting the null values from the job type full name. So job type full name that's coming in from the table does have some null values, and we really did not suppress that. So this is a good thing that we're doing that here in the pie chart. But what we'll do is later on we'll go fix that in the bar chart. But that's an excellent question. Thank you for being so observant, Phil. So we will go back and we will change that, okay? Another thing that we're going to do is in a pie chart, it's always good not to have too many segments. And if we have a ton of customers, you don't want to see that many segments in that pie chart. So what we want to do is we want to limit in the dimension limits tab how many customers we want to see. And let's do this. Let's check on this restrict which values are displayed using the first expression. And we're going to see top 10 customers or 10 customers at one time. Okay. And if there are more than 10, it's going to show in the others. Okay. So one segment will show all the others if there are more than 10 values for customers. We'll go to the sort and sort by expression. Okay, so let's see, sort by expression. So let's click on expression, and hopefully you copied that expression down because that's the long one. So hopefully that's still in your clipboard, which in mine it's not anymore, so I do have to type it down. But hopefully, Phil, you were a little smarter and you still have it in your clipboard, but I'm going to have to type it back. Transactions dot amount with sign. As soon as I see that, I can use the arrow keys and just pull that in. Notice, why do you think, Phil, we have brackets around the transactions dot amount with sign field? What is the reason for the brackets?
Because that's I don't know. Why do we?
We have it because the name of the field has spaces. So when you have spaces in the name of the field, you have to put brackets around it, okay? So the field name.
Why are they all capitalized? Is that important?
Yes, that's also very true. In the field values that you bring in, they have to be written the same way that it comes in from the table. So they're field values. So if they're capital T and all lowercase dot capital A, it has to be spelled exactly the way it's coming in from the table. And if you just make this a lowercase a, you're going to get an error, okay? So because there's no field names that match transactions that amount with sign with the lowercase a. So you have to be very careful about the field names that are within the parentheses. The aggregation functions, you can write this all lowercase, all uppercase, a combination of both, and it does not matter. But the field names inside will matter. So let's put in the rest of this. Squiggly brackets, a pair of those, pair of the less than greater than sign, dollar sign, and another closing parentheses. Notice how I always pair them off and work from outside in, because this guarantees that I'm not missing any kind of matching parentheses or squiggly brackets. So V expression sales is going to be the variable that we've seen before. And that says okay. If we move this box, you'll see that this expression is okay, and then we can click OK. In the Style tab, you can pick the kind of chart type you want in design. Now I'm going to pick a donut shape because I'm getting hungry. So maybe subconsciously I'll pick a donut shape. You can pick whatever you want, Phil, but I picked this one here. Okay. And one more thing we need to do. You may want to keep the legend or not. It depends on how you like it. If you like to see the legend, you can have the legend there. So that's the other thing that you may want to decide on with the design. Number tab, this is sales revenue, so we really want to have the appropriate number format for this. We're going to pick money for this. Notice the format pattern is set here when you pick this. So money has this format pattern. Okay? And then what you're going to do is say finish or OK, and then you will see your chart generated, a pie chart that we have derived originally from a bar chart. So it was quite easy to make these slight little changes. Of course, we took a little time explaining it, but generally it is not that many steps to create a totally new chart from another chart. Okay, so the final visualizations that we're going to do, Phil, if you don't have any questions, is going to be a pivot table. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll create a pivot table, and this is going to be a little bit more dimensions in there and that we have to add, but let's go ahead and do that. And what do you think we need to do here to get a pivot table? What are the steps? That's going to become force of habit to do these, to add visualizations and chart types.
We can clone one of the tables we have already, or we can right-click and choose New Sheet Object.
Okay, let's right-click and choose New Sheet Object because I want to show them from the start how to create a pivot table. So interestingly enough, they do not have a separate option for tables. So we go to the chart option. And in the chart option, first let's assign a title for this, sales revenue. Okay, so let's call it sales revenue. And I'm going to uncheck the show title and chart. And in this chart type area, you see these two little square boxes. One is for pivot table, one is for straight table. Okay, I'm going to click on the pivot table. Pivot table allows you to basically pivot around the rows and columns. Straight table does not. So that's pretty much the difference. So now if we click next, again, the routine is to pick dimensions, right? So we have several dimensions that we need to pick here. One is going to be transactions.bill address date. One is going to be transactions.bill address city. So let's kind of just go and filter on the transactions table and get all the dimensions that are transactions based. So one is going to be transactions bill address date. So let's look for bill address date. Add that here. Another is going to be bill address city. Okay, transactions.bill address city. Add that there. And for the first one, let's label it state. And the second one, city. Give it a friendly label. Okay. Then another one we're going to use is transactions.transactions type. So let's look for transaction.transaction type.
One thing I noticed too is we can double click on them from here to add them quickly.
Ah, good find. Very good. So I'll do what you said, transactions dot transaction type, double click. That adds it to the right. Good observation. And then transactions dot ref number. Okay. And then double click that. And there we go. The rest, the two other ones that we need to add are going to be job type dot full name and customer dot parent full name. So basically, we're going to label this before we move on to adding those. Let's call it transaction type, TXN type. And we'll call this transaction number. Okay. And then what we'll do is we're going to add the other two, but we're not sure which table they're coming from. So let's go back to show fields from table and select all tables. We're not sure exactly which tables they're coming from. So one is going to be job type full name. Okay, add that. The other one's going to be customer dot parent full name. So let's look for customer dot parent full name as we scroll down. Customer dot parent full name, add that. Okay. And another thing that you can do, which is interesting, if you don't like this order, you can change around the order. So you have bill address, state, city. I may want to have, say, job type, full name further up, and I can promote that. So I could put that right after bill address, city, and I can have customer right below that. So I can pull the customer up by promoting it. Okay, so I have this kind of order. So you can change around the order by just promoting and demoting wherever the location of these fields are. Okay. Okay, so basically for all of the above dimensions, we want to make sure that any null values are suppressed. So we could have gone and done this. Let's click on each one and make sure any value that's null gets suppressed in our data. Okay, so we want to go through and do that. We don't want to see any null values. Okay, so we'll do that. And let's see what else we need to do before we
You
get to...
need to label job type, full name, and customer parent full name.
Very good observation. Thank you very much. We don't want to see job type dot full name. So job type, and here it's just going to be customer as the label. Thank you, Phil. Very good observation.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're going to click next. And in the expression, we're going to have our wonderful expression that we're going to dream about tonight, and that is going to be sum. And it's a good practice to type this out, because what's going to happen is the more you type it out, the more it's going to start making sense to you, what you're doing. Okay, so I could say cut and paste and copy all that from a notepad, but if I make you do this, you're going to start getting it. Eventually it's going to stick, and then it's going to become easy for you to write these expressions out.
Well,
Okay?
I can tell you from experience too, sometimes copying and pasting the expressions doesn't work.
So you've had that experience too?
Yes, I've had my blank report wondering why, and the expression looked fine, said it was okay. But then I delete it and retype it, and it worked.
And it worked fine? Yeah, I've had other people say that too. So maybe in this expression editor, it's a good idea just to type it in. I know it's kind of hard to do this kind of lengthy expressions, but you get used to it. So transactions dot amount with sign, again, we have the brackets because it has spaces, and then we make sure curly brackets are there paired off with the less than greater than sign is paired off. Parentheses are paired off. We have our dollar sign and V expression sales for the variable. This is the syntax of a variable. Okay, and then once that's done, say OK, and we have our expression here, but this time let's give it a label, because I do not want to make the mistake I did before without attaching a label that's appropriate. Okay, sales revenue, that's the label that we're going to give that. And then we don't need to do anything to this sort. We're going to go to presentation, and then we're going to decide that we want to always have this fully expanded, so checkbox, okay? And we're going to do that to the dimensions and expressions, okay? Check fully expanded. And then we're going to have partial sums for customer. So let's click on customer and show partial sums for that field, okay? Hope I'm not going too fast for you, Phil. Keeping up?
I am, yes. You're at a very
Okay.
good pace. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll 3 times. We don't need to do anything for style. Number, we need to assign a number format. So for the sales revenue, it's going to be money once again, okay? And then we get to the point where I believe we are pretty much done. So we can click finish. And we have our pivot table, okay? And this gets a little tricky sometimes, pivoting on a pivot table. And if we want to move things around and pivot, we see this arrow, and we do this until it goes horizontal. Sometimes this gets tricky, and sometimes it's like refuses to go up like it's doing now, but it goes up horizontally. Did you get it to go horizontally, Phil, like this? See? It goes across and up. And so now you can pivot on. See how sometimes it does not make sense to pivot on a certain field. So it just does not make sense, and you may not want to do it that way. So you can go back and keep it the way it was before. Okay? So it all depends on when it does make sense to view it in a different way by pivoting the column. Sometimes it just does not make sense to pivot a certain column. But that's how you would pivot. You'd click on this header, you see the blue arrow, you go drag it to the right and up. When the arrow becomes horizontal, it becomes pivoted on a row. Okay.
If we didn't choose to keep this fully expanded, what would have happened?
We can go back and see what would happen. I believe you'd get some plus signs, and that plus sign would mean that you would have to expand on your own. So you'd go back in there and you would uncheck always fully expanded, and you would probably see this. That's an excellent question, because a lot of people see this and they're not sure like why they're not seeing all of their dimensions and data, right? So then you'd have to click on the plus sign and expand each of these plus signs, and that gets to be a little bit tedious. So that's why if you say fully expanded, that really helps you to see everything. So here if we go, always fully expanded, everything is expanded now, okay? Hopefully that answers your question about that.
It does. What if you minimize this sheet object? What would happen?
You would just minimize it, and it would just show in a minimized way, like this.
So it'll
Okay.
always end up in the upper left-hand corner of the
Pretty much towards the
sheet?
upper left, yeah.
Okay,
And
so
you could,
if people had their report title up there, it could be hidden.
but you can move it, like you can move this around, drag it and move it around, just like any sheet object, right?
Correct.
So you can move that minimized, but then people may not know that that's a minimized pivot table. That's the only thing. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to enhance the sheet. Now we added 3 different visualizations. We added current selections box, we added title and date. We want to add some list boxes. We can't make any selections easily unless we add list boxes, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add some list boxes so we can filter on some of the data. Okay, so let's go here, and none of the list boxes here may make sense, so we don't double click on this. We really want to go and pick and choose the list boxes we want to search on or filter on. So like for instance, we have customer, so it makes sense to add customer.parent full name as a list box, and then we might add job type full name as a list box, right? And transactions.bill address city. These are probably the ones that we might want to filter on and do our analysis on. So let's right-click in an empty spot in the sheet, and to add multiple list boxes at once, you could do select fields, second from the top, okay? And we'll do the same kind of thing we did before. We'll add customer.parent full name. We just type out customer, okay, and go down to finding customer.parent full name. And do not delete the month, quarter, year, because it's going to delete it from the date that we have already when you add the list box. Job type, full name, add that. And now we go to the transactions table and add the transactions dot bill address city. Okay, so bill address city is right here. We're going to add that to the right-hand side. Okay. And if you just hit OK, you're going to see that you have all of these bunched up there. We're going to pull them down. You can resize them. Job type full name is not such a big list box. This is probably the biggest one, the customer.parent full name. So you have handles here that will allow you to pull it up a little bit. Okay. So you have all of these list boxes that you can basically move around and put it where you want. But if you do look at the title, this is the title of the list box is taking the field name. Now that gets a little cumbersome, right? So what you can do is you can give it a friendly name again. This is transactions.bill address city. So you can right-click on this header, go to properties, and just call it simply city. And that's going to change your list box name to something more friendly, user-friendly. Customer. Okay? And then job type. In the general title, you're changing the name to be a more user-friendly name for these list boxes. Okay? It's still coming in from the table as job type.full name and customer.parent full name and transactions.bill address city, but for the user, they see a more friendly name. Okay. So this is going to be one of the enhancements we're going to do. The other one that we're going to do is now we're going to do some enhancements to the bar chart. Are you with me, Phil, or are you, should I slow down a bit?
Nope, doing good.
Okay, great. So sales by city and job type is the bar chart. What we want to do is sometimes when you have long names on the x-axis, you can translate a bar chart to move the x-axis into the y-axis. You can't do that with most other charts, but the bar chart you can. You can't do that with line charts. So the bar chart, you can flip the axis. So you can have your city dimension on the vertical. So we're going to do that. We're going to take away the null values under job type full name, and we're going to take the labels away. We know it's city. We know it's job type. So we're going to do a few of those things. So first thing, we go into the dimensions, and we're going to suppress the job type full name so that it doesn't show null. So we're going to uncheck that. We're not going to show the labels for the job type and the city, so we're going to uncheck those. We don't want to see the labels. Okay. We are going to make the style so it's horizontal orientation. So let's go to Style and make this horizontal orientation. Now we'll see those names of the cities on a horizontal, which will be nice. Okay. And under expressions, we may even want to add some of the values on the data points. We may want to see the values. Okay. And then we're going to click OK and see how it looks. Going to expand that a little bit. There you go. That looks a little bit more attractive, right?
I
Took away
like
the
it.
nulls. We have the title that's not cluttered and the x-axis. There's something else we're going to do that's very interesting. And this I think, Phil, you'll like. So let's go ahead and do this. This is called adding a fast type change. And this is going back to your question that you had before. Remember when you asked that question about, oh, in the General tab, what is this fast type change box here? Can I pick the bar chart here? Well, you can, but what we're doing is in fast type change, we're using this area and being more efficient about using space. So when we have less number of sheets and a lot of sheet objects, we want to use the space wisely. So in one area, you may have somebody who wants to see data, and you may have another type of person who likes to see visualizations. And you can make both types of users very happy. So you can say, okay, the finance manager wants to see the data, so I'm going to present this in a straight table. But I have a designer who may want to see this as a bar chart. So you always want to put the original chart type in there and check bar chart, which was that original type. And then you have a straight table. And then you can put this little icon that you see for a fast type change inside the chart or in the caption. And I like to see it on the caption. And you have these few little icons there. Those are coming from your captions tab. And we can keep the menu. This is your minimize and maximize. This says send to Excel, which is checked here, and the print. So if we don't need to print, we can uncheck that, and we can have a menu checked. And now we'll say OK. And you notice it puts the Excel for the send to Excel. It puts this little fast type change icon. It puts this little arrow for the menu and has the minimize maximize button. Now, what happens when we click on the fast type change? Ooh, it goes to a chart format, straight table format. So it flips from the chart, a bar chart, and then it goes to a straight table. So now the finance manager is very happy because he gets to see his data, and the designer is thrilled because she or he gets to see the bar chart and the visualization that basically mimics the data. So that is a great thing for people who want to see data in multiple ways. And not only that, we have this little Excel icon. So look what happens. If somebody does not have your advanced reporting tool, they can click on the data here, click on Excel, that little Excel icon, and it sends it off to an Excel spreadsheet, which can be saved and sent off to somebody at this point. Isn't that
Very nice.
fun?
I like it.
So that fast type change is very, very handy. So, and with that, I believe we are at the end of this chapter, and hopefully you will see something that looks pretty impressive, and you can close the library now and take a look at this. So we definitely got to the point where we were going to go, and we did a lot of work here. So thank you, Phil, for participating in this activity and helping out with all the questions, and the questions I'm sure will help everybody else too. So thank you
Thank,
very much for being with
thank
us.
you for thank you for teaching us all this cool stuff. Love it.
You're welcome. My pleasure. You have a good evening and take care.